Well, welcome back to Focus today. I've got a couple guests from a Christian school in town. You know, one thing that I'm amazed at in our area is how many options there are for education that you can choose from. A lot of areas don't have that, and I'm going to tell you about, well, I'm going to have our guest tell you about the Rogue Valley Classical Christian School. Mary Neel is the founder of that. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. Brian Nicholson, you have kind of a couple hats here. You're the pastor at Trinity Church. You're also a teacher at the school, and I suppose third one would be all-around nice guy. Right?
Perhaps.
Okay. You know, when I see the name Rogue Valley Classical Christian School, I'm thinking of a group of students who either have violins or cellos, just because of the classical part.
Sure.
But I know that that's wrong. You're probably talking more of a traditional style of school. Is that right? How would you describe your school?
Oh, I would describe the school as a traditional school, but with a different methodology and a different content than what the other schools in the valley offer.
Okay, the ages, is this grade school?
Yes.
To what?
We believe it's going to start K through 6th grade, and eventually it'll grow into the 12th grade.
And when are you starting classes?
In the fall.
In the fall. Okay, so you're looking for people who might be interested in this different kind of education, right?
Yes.
All right, I want to find out a little bit more about that, but I want to ask Pastor Nicholson, why are you involved in this?
I've taught Latin at classical Christian schools over the past 15 years and was involved in founding a classical Christian school in Savannah, Georgia some years ago. Yeah.
So there is, I mean, to me and to our listeners and viewers, this might be a new idea, this whole classical Christian school, but this sounds like there are others around, right?
It's been a movement in existence for perhaps about 20 years, and it's really a revival of an older form of education.
Yeah, describe it a little bit, what this is all about. I'm interested.
Yeah. It involves a study of language, logic, and rhetoric. And until about 1900, most American schools taught language, logic, and rhetoric. By that being Latin, then the study of analytical logic, and then rhetoric, which is presentation, persuasive presentation, both in writing and speaking. And it passed away roughly about the turn of the century, about 1900, as new ideas in education came into America that emphasized getting a job, job skills, and holding a job.
Okay.
So at that particular time, the idea of our cultural past in thinking precisely and analytically began to fall apart in America as classical education passed out of vogue. But there's been a revival of interest in that.
Well, it sounds like it. You know, let me throw out one thing. Years ago, I was walking around in Oxford in England, and you kind of, you know, when you walk on a campus, you get a vibe, you get kind of a sense of it, and of course, Oxford is made up of a lot of different colleges, especially like the C.S. Lewis had been there, and J.R. Tolkien, and, you know, I mean, kind of a fascinating thing. But what I noticed was, what it kind of instilled me is that it wasn't so much that you go to those kinds of institutions to learn a craft or a trade, like a technical school, but you learn how to think. That was kind of the idea of I think the old school British way of doing it. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're looking beyond just do you know how to do something, but you're looking at how do people decide how to think about something. Am I right on that?
Exactly. Yes.
And that's a movement that started 20 years ago. That it's slowly growing. Would you say?
Well, after World War II, there was a lady by the name of Dorothy Sayers. She wrote detective novels, which are
I'm familiar with her name. Yeah,
wonderful novels. She wrote a very influential essay called "The Lost Tools of Learning," and she whetted the appetite of the British and also Americans who read Dorothy Sayers for classical education. And it took a few decades for leadership to develop to rethink what classical education was all about and to begin to launch schools with that particular model of education. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
A book written about 20 years ago, which picked up on Dorothy Sayers' essay, is called Rediscovering the Lost Tools of Learning by Doug Wilson, and that's been a very influential book across the United States in Christian circles.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we're kind of going back to what we used to have, perhaps a different way that's now seems also new because it's been so long since we had that. You see, Mary, that there's a kind of a demand for this, at least you must think there is here in the Valley, for this kind of different way of teaching?
I wouldn't say demand, but there's a big interest of this. I've been holding meetings, in my living room and churches and stuff, and the interest is growing.
And tell me, I'm interested in how people are kind of responding to you when you bring up this concept. What is the reaction?
The parents really like it. They really like the fact that their children will become thinkers. There's one little story that I like to share.
Sure.
On the radio, I heard a little news blurb about a dad, a Christian dad. His daughter went to public school, and the teacher wanted the students to write a paper on if the Constitution was relevant for today's America. Yeah. And so the newscaster said, and the dad won. The students didn't have to write that paper. And my heart sank.
So this was who won the argument more than the concept of what they were talking about.
Yes, because we want our children to think. We want our children to research. We want them to become, prolific in their thought pattern and in the speaking of what they know. And to me, that was stolen from them.
Well, let me ask you about what kind of curriculum are you going to have? Is this going to be the same kinds of courses that you'll find at any other school?
There will be the typical math, science, art, all that curriculum, but there's also the extra curriculum. One is logic, one is omnibus, that they're very analytical type classes. I actually got to sit in on a logic class, and in one of these schools that you were observing? Yes, and I have to admit I was lost, but I was very impressed.
That's interesting. And are you teaching any of those, I guess you'd say, alternate kinds of courses? Different ones, maybe?
My focus is Latin.
Okay.
So I love to teach Latin.
And all right, give me the spiel. Why do we need to learn Latin?
Why do we need Latin?
You're having to justify this all the time, I'll bet.
Well, some years ago, David McCullough, who was an outstanding American historian, McCullough was interviewed, and he was asked the question, why is it that the founding fathers of America wrote with such style, with such precision, with such beauty, with such elegance, and with such analytical power? And McCullough answered, and he said, the study of Latin. In fact, he went on and he said, all of these founders studied Cicero in the original Latin, but not only did they know Cicero, he said they were marinated in Cicero. Cicero was a great Roman orator and wrote speeches on political topics in the Roman classical period. But not only did they know Cicero, they knew lots of classical authors through the years, and they had absorbed their thinking, their style, and so they were able to write very persuasively and very powerfully.
And it's because they knew Latin.
They knew Latin, yeah. Harry Truman was not trained in Latin, but he learned Latin as an adult. And he read Plutarch's Lives of the Caesars in the original Latin. And he said by reading Plutarch, he had more insight into human character than any of his cabinet secretaries that advised him. So,
wow. Well, that's it sounds like it's going to be quite an engaging discussion. Do we have a problem where you're kind of fighting against a mindset that we have currently? I mean, I'm thinking if you have a fifth grader who's going to be learning Latin, I don't know, maybe they're at the right age to be doing that, but I'm just thinking, are there too many distractions these days that might cause that to be a problem to come up with this kind of alternative form of education?
Well, parents need to be involved in this process, and some of the parents that I have, of students that I have taught, have learned Latin and logic and rhetoric alongside their children.
With their kids, wow.
So it requires a great deal of discipline, and homework is vital to this form of education. There's lots of recitation, so that students are held accountable for the material that they're taught, and that's the style of education with a great deal of parental involvement.
Okay, so, and I was wondering about that because I know a lot of the more private schools do want to engage the parents. In fact, they say you have to, that's part of your, it's not just giving us some money and we'll train your kid. You have to also be a part of the educational system, so you're going to be doing that too. Any idea how many students you're hoping to have? What's the scope of the size of your
Just
your
leaving
classes?
that up to the Lord.
Okay, so it's going to be, again, the ages are K through 8th? 6th. K through 6, okay.
Oh, no, wait. 8. Yeah, 6.
K through 6?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's called the Rogue Valley Classical Christian School. How can they get in touch with you? What's the best way? Do you have a website yet for that?
Well, I'm developing that, so I don't
Okay.
have that yet. They could call my phone, my home phone, 541-855-7052.
Okay.
And on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., we're having an open meeting where the 2 board members are going to be present who are currently teachers at Classical Christian School. And they're going to be coming down and have an open meeting this Tuesday at 6:30 at the Old South Medford High, 815 South Oakdale.
Oh, sure, right, okay.
Yeah, so they're going to be present and answering a lot of questions.
That'll be this coming Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday.
Good. Well, this sounds like it's going to be a fascinating type of thing. You're just in the planning stages, but hoping to have it in place in September, I suppose, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of facilities that we're looking at, and if anyone out there has any facilities in mind that are inexpensive, let us know.
Well, that's a key for all of us, I think.
Isn't it?
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Mary Neel, the founder of this school, the Rogue Valley Classical Christian School, and Brian Nicholson, pastor of Trinity Church, and also a teacher, soon to be of Latin, right? And who knows what else you might be teaching. Thanks for being with us on Focus today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.